What's up, guys? We are back with another Mythic Legions review, and we're taking a look at the first of two retailer-exclusive Mythic figures that went up for pre-order last year that I guess they kind of got delayed, and now they're finally out. And I've really been looking forward to this one because this one is kind of an oddball figure in terms of how it came to be, and just the parts and the kind of character it is, all that kind of stuff. So this is LIJAE of the Elite Elven Guard, but it's not just a regular figure. Like, this is an actual person from, like, I think he's affiliated with like a Chinese retailer or something and got himself made into a Legions figure somehow. I don't think they released any details on who it is or anything like that, but this is sort of like the Deltagar figure that we got years back. So we've got, you know, actual person for the elven face, and then he's also a half-orc figure too. So there's a lot of different stuff here, which is kind of cool. Now, this is a retailer exclusive, so you can't get it direct from the Horsemen. You can only get it at the approved retailers. Now, he is still a standard figure, but packaging on these is slightly different. So you got him there in the window, in the big bubble, Legion's logo, faction card down there on one spine. You've got your bio on the other. And then on the back, we've got a shot of the Castle of Four Sides with the cross-sell for the two Mythic-only figures in the retailer way, which includes Blue Hagnon. And then the faction card here, or faction insignia, is stamped in gold foil on the back, which is kind of cool. So it's a little bit different, gives it maybe a little bit more oomph in comparison to a standard Mythic figure. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Mythic Legions retailer exclusive LIJAE of the Elite Elven Guard. So again, this guy is part of that retail exclusive wave, so you're not going to find him at the Horsemen website. You're not going to find him at a Horsemen table at a convention. You'll find him at places like Sci-Fi Toys. You know, I'll put a link down below. That's one of my favorite retailers for Mythic Legion stuff. And this guy's pretty interesting in terms of what makes him a figure. Because one, it comes with an absolute mountain of parts, and two, like the Deltagar figure from years past, this features a fan's likeness. So I'm not really sure who that is. It was done in conjunction with a retailer in China in some way. And here we are. So let's see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. So this is an elf, but he's a 1.0 figure, which is definitely different from most of the elves up until recently. So if you messed with, you know, any Legions figure, you basically know what's going on here. Head's going to look up a little bit, down slightly. You got a little tilt, you got a bobble, swivel side to side. Of course, the neck also swivels. Arms out at the shoulders. They swivel. We've got our single jointed swiveling elbow. You got gauntlet swivel, wrist swivel, and hinges. Torso is, of course, a single piece, so it goes backwards a little bit, forward, tilt side to side, swivel. Nothing really new on this guy. It's a lot of old stuff. Legs kick out. They kick forward, of course. They're going to go backwards. You've got your thigh twist. We've got single jointed swiveling knees. And then you've got the swivel at the top of the ankle. Pretty good rocker. And then you've also got hinges. These are ankles that have, you know, a little bit in the way, so hinge isn't that great. But this is fairly standard for a Legions figure. And one thing I'm going to note on this guy in particular, I didn't have to heat him up at all. Like, this guy moves really, really well out of the box. You know, granted, your mileage may vary on that. That may not always be the case. But for me, everything has moved very, very smoothly right out the gate. Now, as is usually the case, my main focus for this guy is really going to be the visuals, and specifically this color palette, and just this mix of parts in this way. I really like the idea of having the bare arms, bare thighs, but then everything else being armored. That said, you get enough parts to make him fully armored as well, so there are a lot of options here that we'll talk about, you know, when it comes time to talk about accessories. But I think right out of the box, pretty happy with the way this guy looks. I do like this particular color of gold. I really like these red accents, and I really like the black and the gold contrasting each other. There is, of course, a lot of old stuff here. This isn't really anything new. You know, we've seen these parts before. Things like the Magnus Vorthog torso. You know, you've got some of the very classic, what are typically more evil parts for, you know, orcs and things like that, with the more what I usually call like the Dark Knight style bracers and the legs down here. But these look really good. I mean, this guy definitely looks like he's maybe a little bit more rough and tumble than your average elven guard or whatever you're going to use him as. But it really works. The colors are great. They pop. The metallic is super, super vibrant on this guy too. Especially when you hit him with enough light, he definitely, you know, will shine and kind of light up a little bit. But then you've got that nice contrast with the black. It really helps to rein him in a little bit, so he's not like this super, super bright sea of gold. You've got all this very contrasting black and gold with these nice red accents. We've got one of the, more recent-ish style belts with more red accents on it also. Of course, you can take that off if you don't want to use it. And I really like this loin piece in particular with the slight pop of silver from that chainmail. It's small, but it does break him up just a little bit, so it's not just a very two-tone kind of figure. I know we've got some red, but that little bit of silver and the silver on like the rivets and the buckles, I really think helped to just sort of rein him in a little bit. So he's not, I don't know, maybe not over the top gaudy. The big thing for this figure, though, outside of the fact that we're going to have to talk about a million accessories when we get to that point, is the head sculpt on this guy. And this is going to be one of the rare instances when it comes to Legions that I'm really not a fan of this head sculpt. And it feels weird to say that because I also said this about the Deltagar figure, and it feels really weird to say that when this is kind of based on an actual person, but I do not like this head sculpt. I'm really not a fan of it, and I don't think it works really well here. I think it works better once we get the helmet on him, and we'll talk about that later. The helmet does change things quite a bit, but this head sculpt, I mean, the sculpt is good. I like the ears, it definitely shows off that he's an elf. The hair is definitely a bit of a unique hair sculpt for Legions. Like, that's kind of almost too real world to me. Like, this doesn't look like somebody who would live in Mythos. Obviously, this is done with a Chinese retailer, so this is an Asian type of character. I just don't know that it really works for me. Something about it, it's very, I don't know, expressionless. I think that's really what it is, and that's pretty typical for a lot of Legion's heads. But this one is just almost like vacant and void of expression or emotion, and I would have really liked to have seen something a little bit more. Once you get the helmet on, I think it's probably going to be just fine, but as it is, not the biggest fan of it. Kind of a rarity for me when it comes to Legions, right? To actually not be happy with something. Well, that's not the way to say it. It's not that I'm not happy with it. I just prefer the other options that we get with this figure. I prefer the alternate head, and I prefer him with the helmet. So we'll talk about that as well. But overall, I really like this color palette. I really like this mix of parts. A lot of old stuff, obviously, but, that's kind of the bread and butter for me when it comes to Legion. So I'm not upset about seeing old stuff. I'm not upset at all about seeing this particular torso again in this colorway. I think it works really well. And again, this black and gold contrast, absolutely doing it for me. Now, as far as accessories goes, this guy is stacked. He is meant to be an army builder beyond the fact that he is a named character. So you can make him, into a legion of these guys. No pun intended. The big aspect of this are the helmet, the pauldrons, and our swappable limbs. So like I said, he does come with armored limbs to complete the look. So you've got the upper arms and the forearms, and then you've got the thighs. So what you end up with are a set of black thighs and a set of black arms, which for customizers and swappers, that's going to be huge. That's very easy to integrate into other figures just by nature of it being a black piece. But what you end up with is a really solid looking figure. I really like him like this. I'm not sure if I prefer him this way or the other way, but I do like this quite a bit. I like the red accents on the arms and those thighs. They're very standard knight pieces. Again, more older 1.0 stuff, but it's classic Legions. What's really crazy are his pauldrons. These are 2.0 pauldrons. These are the smaller pauldrons, and they don't fit all that great to me. Like, they do, but they don't. And it looks fine, but at the same time, I'm kind of looking at it like I kind of wish he had a little bit bigger pauldron. So we'll see how that goes. But I do like these, and they do fit pretty well thematically. So this is something that you would see on, like, an elf or a goblin 2.0 figure. The other thing that he gets is this helmet. So this is a removable helmet, and this covers that head sculpt. I really, really like this, and I'm definitely interested in seeing more of this in the line, as just a way to, give more money and value to a head sculpt. Throw a helmet in there, you've got a second option. But it does fit on here really, really, really well, so I do like that. Sits on him very nicely. You do get another head sculpt, too. So this is a half orc, which I think is probably just the coolest thing. I absolutely love this head sculpt. This may be my preference when it comes to this figure. I do prefer this head to the, the head that he comes with in the box. But it's an entirely different kind of figure, different paint, different idea for any kind of orc we've ever seen. So, if you've got the rainbow of orcs going, you're going to add another one. This helmet does fit on this head, though. So you can armor this guy up as well, which I think is just rad. So I'm really happy with that. I think that's a very cool idea. And then we get into, the actual accessories, the weaponry and things like that. He has a bunch of elven accessories, obviously. So we get the elven, as I drop it, the elven short sword, and this is all done up in a pretty striking black and gold and red color scheme. Of course, the blade here is silver. So if you've gotten any of the older elvish figures or the weapons pack from Advent of Decay. You've seen all this stuff before. Nothing new here. We get the quiver of arrows. No singular arrow with this guy. Not too upset about that. I'll often mention that I'm not a big fan of bow and arrow figures. He does get the elven bow. And then you also get the shield, and this is still like one of my favorite shields in the entire line. It seems very functionally bad for a character, for a person, but it looks awesome. And it looks great in this color scheme with all these gold paint accents all over it too. So you got that. We do get some extra hands for him also. He comes with a right fist and a style posy left hand, and then you get 2 gripping hands. So you get 4 total hands with him, and then you also are going to get a couple of red straps. So the red strap is, you know, kind of an oddity in the line. We see it every now and then, but it's not all that common. So you get 2 of them here if you wanted to kind of bulk him up a little bit and wrap these around his chest. So he does come with a lot. Again, the biggest component of this figure is going to be that extra head sculpt and this helmet, along with the fact that you have swappable limbs. So it does help make up for the fact that you can only get this guy at a retailer. So he does include a lot more parts than average to kind of account for that increase in price that you aren't getting to pay the standard, you know, Legion's price from the Horsemen directly. So I do really like that. And again, if you're a swapper or a customizer, I mean, this has, you know, just good fodder written all over it. Now that he's fully kitted out in gold, I wanted to touch on real quick some of the comparisons to other gold figures, because gold is prevalent in Legions, but it's not super consistent, right? So we've got Gwendolyn Heavensbrand here. You can see she's a very lustrous gold. She's almost kind of on the yellow side of things. And then we've got the Gold Knight 2 here from the recent reinforcements wave. I think he is the best comparison when it comes to matching colors. It's really close to me, at least, you know, to my eye. Your mileage may vary on that. I think this is one if you wanted to try to mix some parts around and make him even golder, I suppose. Of course, one of the major comparisons is always going to be Magnus. I don't think he's the perfect example here because he is weathered. Also, they share a lot of parts. Like, it's the same torso, it's the same arms, it's the same thighs, things like that. But the pauldrons might work well. They might work okay because of that red influence, things like that. Magnus does seem to be a little bit dingier, however, than our new LIJAE figure. And then, you know, just one more real quick. Here is the Monkey King, and I honestly think this might work as well. His gold does seem to be fairly similar. Again, not 100% maybe, but fairly similar, enough that you can fudge it anyway to LIJAE. I think this might be a good comparison. And then I do think our Gold Knight 2 as well. If you wanted to make him even golder, you know, this might be a good one to go with. So our LIJAE does seem to fit pretty well with among the other gold figures. He's not the same as Magnus. He's not the same as Gwendolyn, things like that. But there are a few figures that I think you might be able to pull from without having to paint. So overall, I'm really, really happy with this figure. You know, I will say that I'm not happy with every single thing, obviously, right? I'm not a huge fan of that unhelmeted head on its own. It's not really doing it for me. It's not my thing. But overwhelmingly, I think this figure absolutely works. This color scheme in particular, I keep going back to it. It's definitely striking. It looks terrific with this mix of parts. He comes with an absolute mountain of accessories. Like, there's so much stuff here. And if you're a customizer, if you're a pop and swap guy, you're going to love it just by virtue of the fact that he comes with extra limbs. Like, that's really uncommon. We don't get that often. So to see that here does work really nicely. Changes up the entire look of the figure. Not to mention the fact that we do get a bunch of weapons as well. Love that half-orc head. And yeah, he's just a really cool looking figure. This was easily my most anticipated of the retailer wave because he is something entirely new and not just a new take on an older figure. So I'm really happy that we got this guy. And he definitely looks very, very different compared to all the other Elven things we've gotten. So it does add a nice bit of newness to the Elven shelf. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legions retailer exclusive LIJAE of the Elite Elven Guard. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time.